Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Shaw. The man alongside me is Alex Wolf, and we are once again talking to the GOAT of Knicks analysis. I'm willing to go that far. Benji Ritholtz does these incredible film breakdowns day in and day out. We are getting into why Julius Randle and Immanuel Quickley have struggled, how the Knicks can make their lives easier, and if the Cleveland Cavaliers have a chance, what adjustments do they have to make? What adjustments will they make? We'll talk about it all right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because that means you're an everydayer, and we love our everydayers here at Locked On Knicks. That means you're subscribed on YouTube. You have that notifications bell locked in so you never, ever miss an episode. But who's kindly asking you for listens? I'm Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. And today, as I noted in the intro, we are joined by Benji Ritholtz of Knicks Film School, and you can follow him on Twitter at Ben Ritholtz NBA to continue breaking down this Knicks Cavs series. If you missed it, we had a part one where we got into Tom Thibodeau, how good of a job he's been doing, what adjustments he's made that have empowered the Knicks, and also RJ Barrett and all of his successes for everyone who rightfully accuses me, and I think to a slightly lesser degree, Alex, of being RJ haters. That is the episode for you. This one is all about fixing the other guys. So we'll get into it right now with Benji Ritholtz.
If we're talking, though, about other guys that aren't really putting it together at this particular moment, there are two actual guys that are putting on performances so far in the playoffs that are smidge concerning. That's Julius Randle and Immanuel Quickley. And as much as we hate to lump Quickley in there, or Julius for that matter, I mean, the guy's probably an all-NBA player this year. Those guys are struggling quite a bit. Julius, you noted it earlier, and I guess we could probably start on him. Like, he came out pretty strong in this series. He really did buoy the Knicks in that first game, in that first half especially. You know, gave them a scoring punch they needed, kind of his own little like Willis Reed style moment, coming out there, gutting it out on that sprained ankle and, you know, scoring, looking like himself. But pretty much in how many quarters we've been through since then? 12, 14 quarters since then, does not look good. I mean, he looks uncomfortable. He can't get into any rhythm with his jump shot. And unfortunately, now we're starting to see, as you mentioned in this most recent game, that it's starting to seep into the defensive end and his defensive effort. And we're starting to see some of the worst tendencies that he can offer sometimes come out, where the shot's not falling, and now it's starting to get to, it seems at least that it's starting to get to him and you know, affect his ability to keep his composure in all aspects of the game. What's your read on Randle right now? Is it really so simple as like once the three start falling, things should get better? Because if you want to talk about a guy that, like, about getting into the lane being a skill, he's not doing a ton of that right now and seems to mostly be focused on those 3-point shots. And as a result, now that the threes aren't falling, it seems like nothing is really working for him at the moment, especially on offense.
Yeah. I actually thought starting game 2, the defense fell off a cliff. And it didn't hurt them as much and as obviously as it did in game 4. But game 1, I thought he was particularly active. They asked him to blitz. That was the game plan, and he did it with like a fury. He forced a couple turnovers on blitzes on Garland that were, because he's a freaking scary dude if he blitzes you. He's a huge athletic guy. Like,
he's like a defensive end in football.
Yeah, right. He's like a blitz. Exactly. Coming off the edge, right? Like, that's scary. And I guess the caveat has to be, like, I don't know how healthy he is. I don't know. So it could be that at game 1, he was like all adrenaline, and like the next day was like, holy cow, that hurts. And like, hasn't been the same since. Absolutely possible. So like, we can only speak about what we're seeing. We can't really know. He hasn't been grimacing. Like, he hasn't. Tibbs, I think, like, suggested that he's not feeling great in his post game last night or whatever it was, Sunday. But I don't know. So I'll just say what I'm seeing, with understanding that maybe it's because he's not healthy. But like, hasn't been nearly as active since game one on his blitzes. Just like kind of can see, like, because he knows the pass is going over the top to Mobley, he doesn't feel like he has to be active about that. But you do, especially with Julius, because the more active he is on the initial action, the more active he'll be throughout the possession. Like, that's just how he is. And that's how, like, he'll box out better. Like, you just need to get that guy moving. The more he moves, the better he moves. I find sometimes he just gets lethargic on defense, and he has been since game one, really. On the offensive end, it's not a good matchup. It's not a good matchup. Because Mobley is exactly the kind of defender that you want, because even if Julius can knock him back, he has the length to still contest everything that Julius puts up there. And so Julius, I think, as a result, is settling for a lot of step back and tough threes. And it's been too much isolation. It's been too much isolation on Mobley. I think one thing the Knicks can do to help him out a little bit is screen with him more. He hasn't screened a lot this series at all. And I understand that they're heavily relying on the guard to guard and wing to guard thing, but I think you could get him involved in that sense too. The 1-and-1 that he got against Mobley in the third quarter was after a screen where he received the catch like on the short corner and was able to attack with a Mobley getting back into the picture. Like, that's a much better situation for him, where he can kind of knock him off while Mobley's in movement, in motion. But like, otherwise, like, it's not a good matchup. It's Brunson's series. It always was going to be Brunson's series, and you knew that coming in. Like, Brunson has the advantage here with Garland and Mitchell out there. Like, that's the guy you want with the ball attacking those mismatches. But Julius needs to obviously be a lot better than he's been. Hell, maybe not if they if they play Obi down the stretch, but theoretically he has to be better than he's been if this team wants to go anywhere further than this, right? I think it's just going to be, hopefully he's healthy, and then like just better decision making, attack more favorable situations, try to screen more, get him on the move, and then just be a good defensive player. Like, ultimately, if you have to be a supporter in this series, you got to do it with verve and with like real commitment. That's where you can help the team, like rebound the basketball like a madman, do the things that you can do even if you're not scoring, and hopefully the offensive side isn't spilling into the defensive side.
Yeah, this is maybe a little specific, but I know you appreciate that stuff. Like, how do you think it looks like if he's used as a screener? Because like, are the Cavs like straight up switching that and almost trying to bait Julius like into going like full bully ball and saying like, all right, yeah, go at like Darius Garland, and then in that scenario, like obviously like whoever the big is like that's not involved in the action, like presumably Mobley, and then like Allen's stepping up on that, like you're kind of daring Julius to like throw that lob to Mitch. And I thought what really stood out to me in game 4, like obviously with Mitch, like a lot of it was the offensive rebounding, which is to what you were saying earlier, sort of by the same mechanism anyways, like where that big steps up and then Mitch gets prime position and like they're not strong enough to really get around him or move him at that point. But we also saw like RJ throw a lob to Mitch. Like, I think that was the one where like Garland kind of bumped him and he had like the tip finish. Yep. And then there was one where Brunson, like, I don't know, this is like, maybe this probably wasn't the intent, but I think he saw that Mitch had great position. Like, this was the one early in the game where Mitch ended up getting the dunk and he put up like this really soft floater. And it almost felt like his logic was like, either it's going to go in, yep, like, or Mitch is going to like be there to get the rebound. And like Mitch had the same issue. This is something Ariel pointed out when he was on the pod, like where he's like loading so slowly, but he like had enough time that he could just get the dunk. But I'm getting sidetracked. The point is like would the Cavs like almost try to bait Mitch into being like, or not Mitch, Randle, like, are you going to be willing to throw that lob to Mitch? Like, are you just going to try to take like a short jumper over Garland? Or would they like try to not switch that at all and like scram and like maybe like risk like Brunson like shooting a quick 3-pointer?
Yes. I mean, they've generally been blitzing it just like they blitz everything else. And like Randle got a 3 in game 2 for top of the key when Mobley blitzed, and he just kind of popped to the top of the key and actually made a 3, which wasn't a step back, which is, good. And that's the same that M1 that he got again was off of kind of a blitz and a catch in the short corner. I don't think they're switching it. Where you run into the issue you're talking about, Gavin, is like when one of the big sits, and you have Osman guarding Randle. So there have been a couple of times they've kind of just like thrown it to him at the elbow, and then you get the old Atlanta Hawks situation, right? Which is etched into all of our memories, where he catches on the elbow, the big shades all the way over, overloads the side. Everyone's in passing lanes, and like, what are you going to do, Julius? You're going to have to make a decision here, and he just struggles in that scenario. So I think you have to be careful about that because it doesn't work in the playoffs all the time. Just like dumping it to Randle, where he's not the quickest decision maker and isn't, he gets that bailout foul when he goes right and kind of sweeps his arms through, and that's one of his go-tos. And I think that's harder to find with more disciplined and smart teams in the playoffs. Not really going to bail you out. So it's going to be like make a tough jumper or try to make a pass and don't turn it over, which is hard to rely on. I will say, I think Julius has to be more aggressive going to the basket just to get into the paint against Osman when that matchup presents itself. Even if it's not through the post, but like he's been settling for step backs against the likes of Osman and Danny Green all series, and that you can't have it. Like he's got to get into the paint, get 2 feet in the paint for, like we talked about with RJ. It doesn't have to be pretty, and it's not necessarily to score, but just getting your 2 feet in the paint against a matchup like that is going to force help, and you're going to find the pass to the perimeter to open up a 3. I think that's where the value comes in when that matchup presents itself. And against Mobley, I just think you have to be a little bit smarter about attacking it, and like less frequently and more on the move, I think is the way to go.
All right, we'll be right back in with Benji Ritholtz to continue discussing some things that the Knicks and Cavs could both do a little better to try to swing this series one way or the other, for the Knicks to close out or for the Cavs to potentially take their game at home and possibly push this to 6 games, if not more. But first, I got to remind you all that today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Basketball GM, and it really is one of the coolest games I've played in a while. I've always thought I could be a great NBA GM, and as it turns out, it's not all that easy unless you're like me and you're obsessed with basketball GM type games, and you play it relentlessly until you figure out how to beat it and win as many championships as humanly possible, which is exactly what I did. But you could do the same thing because, you could be like Leon Rose and build a great team. If you had the same thoughts and have fantasized about managing your own basketball franchise, go and download Ultimate Pro Basketball GM right now. The game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise, playing through seasons and leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for dealing with challenging personalities, hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading players, and making draft picks. Spoiler alert, draft picks, mega important. Do that when you play the game. And you're responsible for navigating your franchise through free agency at the draft and all the ups and downs of multiple seasons. All this is in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And I've totally loved taking the New York team. I think they were called the New York Bucks, weirdly enough, which foreshadowing maybe for the next round if the Bucks make a comeback in their series, but probably not. But at any rate, you like go in and your owner tells you that the team is totally terrible and needs to be drug out from the gutter and this, that, the other. Really resonated with me as a Knicks fan. I found it the story was just top notch for a Knicks fan. It really just hit home.
Painfully so, it sounds like.
Painfully so. So, but it makes it that much better when you do just like Leon Rose and put together a great team. So, Locked On Knicks listeners can get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com. Scan the code or look it up on your favorite app store. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today.
And we also wanted to tell you about our friends over at Ibotta. Watch your closet grow after purchasing all of this season's latest trends. How about also watching your cash grow back with each purchase with Ibotta? A typical basket of groceries was over $50 more expensive at the end of 2022 than at the beginning of the year due to inflation. You could earn 2.5 times that in cash back from Ibotta, and even more depending on how much you use Ibotta. Ibotta gives you real cash back, not points. Other apps gives you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too. When you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 off just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED. When you register, just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED.
Well, Benji, to move to the other guy that I mentioned a moment ago.
Yeah.
Immanuel Quickley. I'm going to keep this one pretty short because this is kind of how I feel, at least. And I'll see if you feel the same way. But with him, is it almost just so simple as the shots need to start falling? Because I honestly, I have not had too many nits to pick with his his defense. Like I said, I think that he made a difference on Garland the other day. Once his number was called to step in there instead of Brunson. And, I think he's still impacting the game in that way. Just the scoring is not there right now. And I think it mostly just comes down to just one of these stretches, just with unfortunate timing that we've seen from Quickley in his career, where he just kind of can't find the hoop right now. And that just kind of, luckily it doesn't affect the other parts of his game, but it comes in waves with him from time to time. And it seems like we're dealing with a tidal wave at the moment. What's your read on what's hampered him at this point?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Definitely, primarily, it's just like, man, make some shots. I mean, I can think of a couple. The three when RJ skipped it to him, it was wide open. Hartenstein set the pin and screen, and like he's just standing there wide open, way short. He had a two where he kind of got away with a little bit of a push off, but basically was wide open from about 10 feet. Was short. It's like, yeah, make shots. So that is number one to me. I Quickley obviously has improved so much as a ball handler and a driver. And like statistically, I know how good the numbers are in terms of his ability to get into the paint. There's still something about the way he drives and handles that I think teams could take away with pressure and physicality. And I think that is affecting him a bit. The Cavs pressure really high on the floor, and they're very physical on the perimeter. And I do think that it limits him a little bit in terms of his ability to break down a defense. I think that's also a factor. I also think usage is a factor. Like, I think with Brunson playing more minutes, those like IQ-led bench units just don't get as much time. And so he's not getting as much time to kind of be featured and run pick and rolls. And I think that eats into a player's rhythm and like just like doesn't give him the opportunities he necessarily needs to really get going. So I think that's also a factor. So kind of all those things combined, I think the Knicks would be well served to give him a little bit more usage, even with Brunson on the floor, relieve some pressure on Brunson, who's getting picked up full court like a lot of the game. I don't see any reason why Quickley can't bring up the ball, run some actions for Brunson off ball, but just like allowing Quickley to get those touches and some opportunities, I think would be wise. As you said, I think game 4, he was terrific defensively. It was his best game defensively by far. I don't think he's been as impactful there as I've seen him over the course of the season, but in game 4, he was everywhere as a rotator on ball on Garland. He was great. He was terrific. So yeah. And that's how you get to, whatever, plus 11 and with 0 points. I think that was real. I think he was impacting and winning in a very significant way. But yeah, we want to get him going a little bit offensively. I think just, a little, make some shots. Number one, a little more usage, I think would be helpful as well. Yeah, that's what I would say about IQ. Not too worried. Honestly, I think it'll come, but that's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, worth noting to what you were talking about earlier in the podcast, like he has been great as a screener, and in game 4, like kind of replaced Grimes doing that, because I thought Grimes in game 1 really stood out in that respect, and the fact that the Cavs didn't want to leave him, and that you got the switch basically you wanted for Brunson every single time. And then in game 4, it was a bunch of like IQ setting a screen, Brunson rejecting it, got like a really, I think it was IQ, and Brunson hit that 3, like it was like late third quarter, early fourth, like it made it 71-70, I think. But yeah. Those are great because, like, again, IQ, like you even in a series where he's not shooting well, where he's a little bit reticent to shoot, like you don't want to leave him, and Brunson can really play with that by just zipping the other way. And I think the other big thing is like getting like kind of what you're doing with RJ, like finding ways to get IQ the ball with momentum. Because to your point, like he's very like similar like to like when you talk about RJ at his worst, like where he has to reload on a drive, like IQ can be like very, very methodical at times. And like I enjoy it a lot more like once like kind of the 3-point shot comes first, and then he can play off that and like pump fake and like he's like, even it was crazy. Like even when he wasn't making shots early in the year, like his pump fake was still totally deadly and guys couldn't help but bite on it. And I felt like that, like a similar formula would be great. Of course, though, he's kind of passing up threes. I was kind of happy game 3. Like I thought he got going like his in between game a little bit, hit 2 floaters. I think the Knicks are, at least to win game 5, they're going to need some of that from him. Like you could certainly say like, I mean, like Randle having a great game would do that too. But I guess this kind of leads into like where we can finish up. Like, what do you expect is like final adjustments from the Cavs? Like you noted that, like, personnel wise, they've kind of already made their big moves. They don't have a lot of flexibility there. Like, where is there still meat on the bone for them to get back in the series beyond just Donovan Mitchell playing better, which to your point could happen and make everything else sort of moot?
Yeah.
And then how can the Knicks kind of answer those?
Yeah, I think they'll feature more 1-5 pick and rolls. I think they got some traction there in the third quarter, obviously. Certainly when Brunson's in the game and guarding the likes of Garland or Mitchell, I think they will just simply spread the floor and set Jared Allen will set a screen. I think they'll do more of that. I also think the lineup that I don't know if they closed the second quarter with this lineup, but it was solid. They had Okoro at the 4 with Mobley at the 5. And they threw Okoro on Brunson. So I guess it was Garland, Mitchell, LeVert, Okoro, Mobley. Yeah. And I thought that lineup played really well. I don't know if they got to it in the second half. I don't even think they did. But I could see them kind of going back to the film and saying, oh, that looked pretty good because we could throw Okoro on Brunson. And we still, even though Okoro can't shoot, at least we have our 3 best guards around that with Mobley as instead of having to spread anywhere is just the center. I could see that. I think Okoro has proven himself worthy of like being reinserted into the regular rotation, even if not as a starter. He offers enough, and he's made just enough shots, maybe, even though I think the Knicks will continue to ignore him. They should not play Rubio anymore. I don't know what the hell they keep going back to Rubio for. Like Danny Green, I said in game 2, I'm like, I know Danny Green played and made a 3. I didn't think he was moving well at all. So I don't know if that's like a health thing, if he's going to play. So I don't know, but those would be the counters. And they made this weird thing where they put Garland on Brunson to start game 4, and I don't think they're going to do that again. I don't think that made any sense. I think they overthought it. They were like, well, if we put Garland on Brunson to begin with, and they can't technically bring Garland into the action. He's already in the action, so we can't go like guard to guard screen and mess us up. But then I was like, okay, but the Knicks are like happy to just like let Brunson attack Garland.
You can't hurt me. I'm going to hurt me.
It was very weird. I didn't really get that adjustment. I didn't think it really worked. Brunson's happy to attack Garland anyway, and I think whatever, they might have shot themselves in the foot there a little bit. If I had to guess, I would say LeVert starts again. He starts on Brunson. They play a little bit smaller, try to spread the Knicks out a little bit and rely more heavily on their 1-5 and 2-5 pick and rolls. If those are the adjustments I'm expecting, we'll see.
What do you think from the perspective of the Knicks? Is there like what is there left for the Knicks to do to continue getting better against the Cavs here? Like that was sort of the case for like how the Cavs can potentially punch back, against the Knicks here and maybe make some adjustments. Like if the Knicks keep going more or less status quo and the Cavs don't adjust, like have the Knicks sort of obviously they have with the 3-1 lead, but like have the Knicks sort of put themselves in the position now where they're sort of like, if we could use a Star Wars reference, they're like Obi-Wan right now, and the Cavs are Anakin down on the platform, and they're saying like, I have the high ground right now. Like you're going to really need to figure something out here because otherwise we've pretty much got you beat at this point. I mean, is there much left that the Knicks need to do other than just sort of stick with what's working for them? Or is there anything that you still look at maybe outside of just Randle and IQ making shots that screams to you like, no, this still needs to be worked on? And if the Knicks do this, they more or less have guaranteed themselves a series victory here.
Yeah, some of the things we talked about already, I think like trying to free Randle up a little bit, like in all the ways we discussed earlier, just to get him going and not another really poor efficiency night, I think would be great. I think you have to look at the third quarter where you struggled early and like figure that out. How are we guarding that Garland Mobley screen and roll, Garland Allen screen and roll? How is Brunson tracing over if he's the one guarding it? He just needs to be a little bit better. I think you're watching the film and you're like pointing out, hey, Jalen, you got to get over the screen. You got to pursue from behind so that Mitch can, like, you have to just like be a little sharper so that Garland doesn't go off. We've now seen 2 different times where Garland's really gone off. And I think they're susceptible to it, obviously, the Knicks. So you have to try to clean it up, be a little bit tighter in your pick and roll coverage. Maybe Mitch is a little bit higher up to prevent the pull-up 3. But otherwise, I think just like tightening that up. And then you have to, on Mitchell, I think they've done as well as you could do. Like, he might go off, but I don't think it'll be because the Knicks are like not doing the right thing. But Randle defensively, I think, is the other one where it's like be game one Randle. Like blitz with aggression, recover with aggression, box out with aggression. Like, let me see that Julius Randle, because otherwise everyone on the defensive end is really giving everything they have. Hard to really point to anything else on the defensive end. They've been so good on defense. So I think you just look at that beginning of the third quarter and you say, how do we clean up that coverage? I think that's the main thing. Offensively, I think they found that what works is just a matter of executing correctly. Like, man, could the Cavs like pivot and just like switch those actions with Brunson? That's possible. Is that they're down 3-1, they're like, you know what, Garland, Mitchell, just man up and guard the guy on the switches instead of us trying to hedge and recover and do all this stuff. So I could see that, and that would be interesting. And I think Brunson can attack that every time. You probably have to be a little bit selective and not like shoot every shot for the rest of the game. But I think I'm not worried about that. I just feel good about Brunson handling that, you know? So yeah, other than that, I don't know. I those are the things you got to clean up. Otherwise, stick to the script. Beat them on the boards again. You know, one of the more surprising things about this series is that they've won the turnover battle. And that was not one that I expected them to win because the Cavs are one of the best in the league at forcing turnovers. The Knicks are one of the worst at forcing turnovers, but they've actually forced the Cavs into a lot of turnovers, and the Knicks haven't turned it over at all. So game 4, I think they only had 10. So you got to stay with that, right? Like, careful with the ball, keep mixing up your coverages and trying to force turnovers on the other end. You got to feel good about where you are, but you never, you always want to anticipate what the other team's going to do. Like, you don't want to sit on your laurels. I think maybe the Cavs did that a bit in game 3. You want to make sure that you're prepared for what adjustments you might think and kind of counter adjust in your game plan. So I think those are the things they'll look at.
Yeah, I think it would be ballsy, but I kind of think they might go to switching everything and just try to say, hey, Jalen Brunson, like score 50 on us, like kind of the inverse of what the Knicks are doing on Donovan Mitchell, and make it so like RJ and Josh Hart don't have a runway, like make it so their bigs can actually like throw like multiple bodies at Mitchell Robinson, because right now, like it sort of feels like, all right, we're throwing everything at Jalen Brunson and he's still scoring 29 points pretty efficiently, and RJ's getting to the rim, and Hart's able to get inside and either get layups or throw nice passes, and Mitch is feasting on the glass. So I mean, if I were running Cleveland, and they would be in a much worse position if that were the case, but I think that's kind of the approach I would take.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they did. You know, for me though, the Cavs, like, they have to score.
Yeah,
like the defense hasn't been terrible. It's been mostly very good.
Been 99 and 102 points. Like you should
they cannot score right now. Yeah. And so that's going to be the thing that they're going to be focused on, is like, how do we free up our guys? I do expect a pretty large dose of that Jared Allen pick and rolls to start the next game. That I do, because I think the Mobley pick and roll just hasn't worked because Mobley hasn't hurt them on the roll. But they're going to look to get their guys off with pull-up threes when the Knicks are playing drop. I think they will feature a heavy dose of Jared Allen pick and rolls. And the Knicks need to deal with it and be prepared for it.
All right. Well, Benji, I think that's as good of a primer as we could get for this upcoming, hopefully decisive, no jinxes, knock on wood, game 5 coming up here. Thanks so much for covering so much ground with us and talking about so much about what you've seen. We freaking love your view of everything. Obviously, I think you're one of the better people to go to on Twitter if you're like, I want to understand things a little better than I could be right now. It's you do a very good job of laying it out in plain English, and hopefully people feel that way about this pod too. But thanks so much for popping on. Do you want to remind everybody real quick where to find you and where to find your work before we get going here?
Yeah, sure. Ben Riddle's NBA. Sometimes on the Knicks Film School feed as well. So you can probably find me there. Throughout the playoffs, I'm all over, just doing as much as I can to try to break down this series and everything going forward. I can say with confidence that people feel that way about your pod as well. So thank you for the flattering words, but you guys do an incredible job in your own right. So thank you for having me on. Always an honor to be here. And let's wrap this one up Wednesday night. What do you say?
Let's do it.
I'm with it. And people can tune in for our post-game coverage and coverage of any ensuing games, whether that be in round 1 or round 2. Hopefully in round 2. I'm not even going to say against who, because then it could be thrown in my face if it doesn't happen, or if it does happen, and then they do this. So I'm not going down that road. Thank you, Benji. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.